for me, when I decided to join the military, I never signed that I don't want a relationship with the Hasidic world, which was one of the gifts that I have from life. Like when people ask me, I always say, what a gift that I grew up in the Haredi world. Thanks God who gave me the power to live, because it was so hard. I was dead. My parents, it's really complicated. My parents told me, we're not going to see you. It was, and again, it didn't happen. Because later we build peace and we work a lot to heal that. So I paid a price. When I joined the military, it was one way out.
Welcome back to the Pluralist Podcast from both sides of the ocean. I'm Orly Erez-Likhovski, Executive Director of the Israel Religious Action Center.
And I'm Josh Weinberg, Vice President for Israel and Reform Zionism at the URJ and Director of ARTSA. Orly, great to be with you today again.
Great to see you. How are you, Josh? How are things?
Well, things are tense as always. And, I'm excited for this conversation. I think that we have a lot to talk about. I know that we're counting down to the elections. And today, actually, we are going to talk about the Haredi in Israel, or the ultra-Orthodox. And just for our listeners' information, we will refer to them as the Haredim, and Yakir, our guest, will be able to tell us a little bit more about that term as well. We're very lucky to be joined today by Dr. Yakir Englander, someone who I consider a friend, a colleague, a teacher, a leader in our community, in both sides of the ocean, as it were. Yakir grew up inside the Haredi community and later left it, and has continued to play a really important role in bridging divides across Israeli and Jewish society here, both in Israel and in North America. Yakir is a scholar of Jewish philosophy, gender, sexuality, and ethics, and has taught and written extensively about Jewish thought and identity. He has worked with thousands of Jewish community leaders across North America through the Israeli-American Council, and spent many years with Kids for Peace, bringing together young people across religious and national divides in Jerusalem. Now, what you may not realize is that Yakir's personal story is fascinating in its own right. But today, we want to use his unique perspective to better understand the place of Haredim in Israeli society and what this moment reveals about Israel's future. Let's just say a moment before we welcome Yakir, and we're so glad that you're with us. Just say, Orly, frame this a little bit more about why now? Why is it critically important to have this conversation?
I think the Haredim are, play an important role in Israeli society always, and I think the place of Haredim in Israeli society has really reached a boiling point, especially after October 7th, and especially during the last few weeks when the protests of Haredim all across Israel against attempts to draft the Haredim to the army and against the attempts to actually stop different benefits that has been given to the Haredim for many years, but are now being sort of stopped because they do not serve in the army, and huge, massive protests that really sort of cause a complete block of Israel. I just got a message that is running in a WhatsApp group saying that tomorrow there's going to be 18 places of protest, and people are just not going to leave their home because it has really reached a boiling point. And obviously, looking forward to the elections, this is something that is really, really on the table on all sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's fascinating, of course, and we'll see what happens. So let's get right into it. Welcome, Yakir. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
It's a great honor. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, it's an honor for us as well. And Yakir, let's start really from the beginning. Would you be willing to sort of paint a picture of your childhood and the world in which you grew up and were raised?
If we want to start from the beginning, I think we need to start, something that I really love about the Haredi world, but I will focus more in a second in my story about the Hasidic world, which is one sect of three sects that we can say inside the Haredi world. I think that my story didn't start with myself. One of the beauty about the Haredi world is that you live the stories of your ancestors. I mean, even if you think about my two names, Yakir and my second name, Yaakov. So Yakir was someone who was killed, a Hasidic family member who was murdered in the Holocaust, and I carry him and his story. And also Yaakov is after one of the Hasidic rabbis. Of course, not after Yaakov, our father, but it's after one of the rabbis. And I think this is something very powerful about the Hasidic world that you carry in your name. As Zelda, the Israeli poet, she wrote, you carry the stories of your parents and your ancestors. In the Hasidic world is very important because the majority of my theology as a child happened by doing two things. One, by listening to stories, many hundreds, thousands of stories, which made me who I am. When I have a challenge in the world, what I try to do is to pray, and my prayer is actually by asking or doing kind of meditation that allow a story to almost pop up from inside myself, from my kishkes, and then I know how to walk the challenge that I have. So my ancestors are huge things. So this is my story. The second thing I would just say that our theology is happening by singing, by songs, by the melodies. So I grew up in a Hasidic city. Then it was the only Hasidic city or Haredi city in Israel, Bnei Brak, which is like 20 minutes from Tel Aviv, 2,000 years culturally from Tel Aviv. And I grew up in a Vizhnitz dynasty, which is one of the Hasidic sects. We are coming from Hungary historically. Vizhnitz are the cousins of Satmar, that probably other audience heard about Satmar because of their anti-Zionist opinions or state of mind. So Vizhnitz is, at least in Israel, it's anti-Zionist, but it's complex. It's very misubach because the Vizhnitz Rebbe, my rabbi, he is traditionally the president of Agudat Israel, the political group of the ultra-Orthodox, of the Haredi. So it's a complex relationship. So I grew up in the yeshiva world. I never studied in a regular Israeli high school, or for sure, if we speak about limudei liba, all these studies that,
the core
Israel,
curriculum.
the core curriculum for Israelis who are not Haredi. The core curriculum for the Haredi is that the Talmud if you're a man. So
not
I think
according to the law, but that's another story. We'll talk
exactly.
about that.
but the law again is the law of a state. That's something that is very complex, which by the way really helped me because when I decided to leave the Haredi world when I was 22 years old, and I was forced to join the military. No one asked me. I didn't want. And I served 3 full years and then many, many years in reserve. And the military saw my complex story. So they put me in a very complex unit of identifying the dead bodies of the conflict. Which made me to meet Israel by the suffering. I met Israel, the Zionist story, by the dead people of both sides. And I think because of the way or because of the questions that I carry with myself as an ex-Haredi, it helped me to understand how complex the story. And later, after my military service, when I volunteered as a director of an interfaith youth movement in Jerusalem for both Palestinians and Israelis, Muslim, Christian, and Jews, I was a perfect candidate because I totally understand the narrative of the Palestinians that do not include the Zionist assumption about what Israel is, because this was more my story. And also because of my military service and my falling in love with Israel, of Israel that you know, and study in secular Israeli Zionist institutes like Bina, like Alma. So later I learned the beautiful stories of the Zionists, and I can hold this complexity. I think I will summary and I will say that I think my gift in the world is to hold complexities without need to compromise one on the other, but I do action, meaning I make decisions. And many times my decision go against some voices inside me or some of the people that I love a lot. Depends what is my opinion about specific thing.
So I think, Yakir, it's a really beautiful way to say it. This room for complexities. I think really the world needs most of that, especially in a polarized world like we have today. But I want to take you a step back, going back to your decision to leave the Haredi world. And when you spoke of your ancestors, what came to my mind is that, I think most of us here in Israel, maybe outside of Israel too, we had grandparents who most of them were Haredim, right? I mean, my grandparents grew up in a very observant home, and they decided to leave the religion, become secular, and become Zionists, and they immigrated to what was then Palestine in the 90s. And actually, my maternal grandfather, he wrote a diary, beautiful diary, and he's really has written about his discovery of scientific books, of secular books that he read secretly in the yeshiva, and finally discovering a whole new world outside. And it's just amazing to see. And I want to ask you, what was your process that actually brought you out of this Haredi world?
Yeah, thank you so much, Orly, about sharing the story. And I think the stories that you share is story of many Israelis, right? So it's, and again, I'm not sure we can call to every state or every community in Europe, Haredi community, because the Haredi before the Holocaust was very different than the Haredi post-Holocaust. So I want to be a little bit sensitive. I don't want to have the assumption that the majority of Israelis with European roots coming from Haredi background. However, it is true that the question of masorti, of traditional, of being observant is probably the story of the majority of us. And there are reasons, by the way, why your grandpa or your great-grandparents decided to leave it. There was a price to live as an observant diaspora or exiled Jew in Eastern Europe or Western Europe before the Holocaust. And we see the results. So this is just one. I mean, I don't want people to have an assumption, like nostalgic assumption, that it's like this was a common thing among us. Then the Zionists rebel. And then now we have a challenge. What I want to say is there are really good reasons why the Zionists rebel against what was a traditional shtetl community, because it brought them a lot of suffering. So this is one. Now about myself, it's really hard to know what made me to leave the community, because the language that I have today as an academic, as an Israeli, it's a very logical language. I try to have claims. When I was Haredi, I had stories. I had narratives. My world was very Talmudic, meaning nothing really makes sense. Everything reminds you everything. So it's just different state of mind. I can try to say that two main things deeply bother me. One, I never understood how come that all my ancestor stories, the thousands of them, I have zero stories about a woman, even not one woman. I mean, some women were married to rabbis, but they were never the essence, the main part of the story, the
protagonist
hero
of the story.
Yeah, and also all the stories about women, if there were any, which I cannot remember one, it was written by men or told by men. By the way, same about the Talmud, and it's about all Jewish history, and it's something that I think we need to heal. And this is why I'm so proud to live today and teaching in a rabbinical school where the majority of the rabbis in America are women. So I would just say that. And when I was with my sisters, who are much more brilliant than me, much more, I mean, I'm a joke, compared to them, it bothered me that the only book that I study the majority of the day, which is the Talmud, they were not allowed to even have access to it. And it didn't make sense for me. Or as a person, like there is a statement, it's unclear if Hasidic women are really Hasidic women or they are women who are married to a Hasid man. Meaning, because they don't study the theology, they don't get the huge benefit that I get. My father, which I love him a lot, never really sat with them to tell them any story. Okay? In Shabbat, they never sang the songs. So I don't know what they are. And I mean, today I know because we have deep relationship and friendship. So this was one. The second thing is that at one point when I was in the yeshiva, it was in Jerusalem. And one evening I went out because it was just a hard day for me. And I went to buy something in a store, and I saw the person, the seller, watching the TV, cannot talk to me, and understood that something happened. What happened was that two helicopters with, I think, 72, if I remember, 73 soldiers on the way to Lebanon from the north, from a kibbutz or moshav in the north, crashed into each other. It was an accident.
It was in 1997.
1997,
which makes sense because I was drafted in 1998. And I remember that he was in shock, everyone in shock. I was in shock because my narrative as Haredi was that I'm studying and praying in order to protect the chayalim, to protect the soldiers. So for me, something I did wrong, right? And when I went back to the yeshiva, the majority of my beautiful colleagues in the yeshiva just didn't care. And then I understood that the theology that I believed all my life, that the Haredi we tell ourselves, for me, it crashed that night. I thought that the head of the yeshiva is going to gather all of us and going to say, tonight, we need to do cheshbon nefesh. We need to do deep reflection where we are wrong. How come that 70 and something and 2, 3, I don't want, I mean, every soul is a whole human being, a whole world. But how come that we failed? And it didn't happen. And I remember that night coming to my chavruta, a beautiful man who is incredible, sensitive Haredi rabbi today. And I told him, Ezra, I'm going to the military. I don't believe something crashed.
Wow. But I mean, as we say, in Aramaic, tarte mashma, something crashed, like
100%.
in the full meaning of the word. It's such a powerful story. I don't think, all the discussions we've had, I don't think I've ever heard that as a, formative moment for you. Take us a little bit deeper, if you will. And what was the reaction of your family and your community? I'm sure you're not the first person who has left the community, but, when you said that to your chavruta and, then to your family and just give us a little bit more of your, like, how many siblings do you have? Just,
and again, I'm not the center. I think it's important to understand
course,
the Haredi,
but
but I will try to tell the story in order
yeah.
that we can understand the complexity of being Haredi today.
I'll just say that because
Please.
Many of our listeners, I think, don't necessarily have the opportunity to get into, to the inner workings of this world. They've all watched Stiesel and Unorthodox, and I want to get to that actually at the end, but your story is fascinating, so we want to hear more.
For sure. And please watch Stiesel. It's an amazing way to understand us. Watch Unorthodox. And there are a few other incredible Israeli and movies and non-Israeli movies about the Haredi. Disobedience is incredible about lesbian Haredi. There is a new movie about Eye Close Open, not the one with Tom Cruise, the Haredi one, which is about the gay Haredi. It's a question. I had a yeshiva, one of my chavruta, he is gay. I mean, there are many questions. I will go back to myself for your question, Josh. I come from the dynasty of Vishnitz, as I mentioned. I have 6 siblings. When I left, it was, today, okay, I will speak about then. We speak about 1998. For me, to join the military, it was a declaration. They put me a gun in the head. If I join the military, it means that I betray the community. End of the story. And it means that I need to leave. And it means that I do not come back. And it means that I'm losing my family. And it means that I lose all my community. It was no compromise, no ability to end. There was no end. And I really wanted the end. For me, when I decided to join the military, I never signed that I don't want a relationship with the Hasidic world, which was one of the gifts that I have from life. When people ask me, I always say, what a gift that I grew up in the Haredi world. Thanks God who gave me the power to live, because it was so hard. I was dead. My parents, it's really complicated. My parents told me, we're not going to see you. It was, and again, it didn't happen. Because later we build peace and we work a lot to heal that. So I paid a price. When I joined the military, it was one way out. And when you ask Josh, did I know anyone else who did it before? It's a little bit before the internet. So no, I didn't. I knew that there was one woman who left from Vishnitz. Her name is Sarah, and she committed suicide in the kibbutz. And the Hasidic community, they told us about her to show that even someone who leaves, she committed suicide because she wanted to declare that she regrets. Now, it's totally crazy story. It's not her story. Her story is much more complicated. It's true that she committed suicide. It is also true that there is a huge, unfortunately, percentages of people who leave the Haredi world and we commit suicide. And I say we, because I think that each one of us in a way need to commit suicide to live. And I think that some people who suffer so much and they have the courage to live, the suffering doesn't leave them. and therefore we see these commit suicide numbers. I can say that I dedicated, not alone, of course, with many volunteers in Hillel, which is an organization, Israeli organization, to help people who decided to leave the Haredi world. And we dedicated many years of volunteers to help in two ways. One, that when we come to the military and we say we left the Haredi world, the military is ready for us. In my time, no one understood what the hell you are.
Yeah.
Like my officers, they said, you know what? Okay, so you're a lonely soldier. I said, yes and no. I have parents. So they said, okay, we will send female soldiers to Bnei Brak to speak with your parents.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
I said, no, you are not going to do that. So they said, so you are not lonely soldier. Like no one understood what the implication to go to my family, who you need to understand when I left, destroyed.
And we saw a case of that a few months ago, or was it a few months ago, where two female soldiers...
Yeah, there was a case, right, that soldiers
recently
came
where
and then they were, violently attacked.
a huge riot, against
in Bnei Brak, yeah.
Oh, yes, right. But just imagine then, like, the shame that it will bring to my family if, like, female soldiers will come to my family, who, anyway, I crush them because the matchmakers, after that, for my brothers and sisters, was affected because I'm the black sheep. So it means something was wrong in the education, which I think it's the opposite. I think something went very well in their education. But let's leave that. So, yes, the military was not ready. I had luck that I made a friend with one of the soldiers, a Zionist Orthodox soldier, and he and his family, Yonatan Ben Arosh and his family, just adopted me, like literally adopted me. So I'm saved. Otherwise, I don't want to imagine my life. I can say that later, as a second intifada, the second Palestinian uprising continued, and I had, unfortunately, many hard moments in the military as identifying dead bodies. My parents and me, we start having agreement how I can come back home. Today, I can say that we have incredible relationship. And with Hillel, today, the majority of the rabbis will say that even if your son or daughter, they leave, make many efforts in order not to kick them out from your life.
Wow.
So I can say that these 20 years made huge change.
And just say what Hillel is for...
Yeah, I want to say something about Hillel
please.
because I think we're working with them, but I want to say, Yakir, that first of all, you're describing a really unbelievable experience of loneliness and huge challenges. And we should mention, probably our audience maybe know, that becoming Haredi in Hebrew is chozrim b'tshuva, so going back and getting the answers. And when you leave the Haredi community, it's called yotze b'she'ela. You're going out for questions, which is really interesting. I think it's very different from how you describe it in English. Hillel, which you've mentioned, which is really the organization helping the people who left the Haredi community, and there are other organizations like Yotzim Leshinoi, and they really have brought about significant changes in how Israeli society and especially the different government ministries are treating those people, helping them actually integrate into society. And we have been representing Hillel. IRAC has been representing Hillel around the struggle on the issue of the kosher phones, because specifically what's happening with people who are leaving the Haredi community is kosher phones are actually marked by specific numbers. So the Haredi community would be able to identify a person if he's a real Haredi or not according to his phone number, which is kosher. But once you want to leave the Haredi community, you have to change your number, and that is taking you out of the Haredi closet, even if you don't want it, because that way people know you're not Haredi anymore. So we filed a petition to the Supreme Court saying people should be allowed to keep their number, otherwise it violates the right for privacy and autonomy, and we represent Hillel in this regard. But I think that speaking about how much you're integrated into Israeli society, or whether you want to be a complete different part, which is really portrayed in the story about the crash of the helicopters, right? Saying, are we a part of Israeli society or we don't care about it at all? I want you to paint us a picture of Haredi society in Israel. And I think we are seeing many, many instances of people pulling apart and really sort of a very close-knit community that does not have ties with the general public. And obviously, this is what the Haredi leaders are trying to do, right? For them, politically, it makes sense to keep the people in their own, the Haredi in their own educational systems, and of course, not integrate them in the army and in other framework. We've seen a lot of cases during COVID that the Haredi community completely had their own life and didn't go again along the restrictions.
Follow the protocols of
the protocols of COVID. And we've seen, you mentioned the core subject. This is also something we've been dealing with for many years. They don't care what the law says. We are, teaching whatever we want. But on the other side, we're seeing, I think, the interests of the Haredi public itself is not necessarily the same as the interests of their leaders. And they actually want to somewhat open up to Israeli society. And we see more and more people going to pursue academic studies and going to work outside the Haredi community and maybe wanting for their kids a better future and sending them to public Haredi schools, which is a new stream because they want something else. So if you could paint for us a little bit a picture of the Haredi society today and this difference between the leaders and the public itself.
Thank you, Orly. Thank you. I would try to create some structure, maybe. All what you said is true and accurate, and I will try to give it some structure. So I will say like that. They are three main sects inside the Haredi world. So let's just walk into them. Two of them are Ashkenazi, meaning with roots from Europe, mostly from Eastern Europe. So the two are, one, the Hasidim, which we know like from Chabad, from Vizhnitz, from Satmar, from Gur in Israel, which is the largest one in Israel, from Belz, which is the second largest in Israel. Vizhnitz, I think, is the third. And then we have many, many little Rebelech. It's like small Rebbe with small community. From Amshenov, from Lelov, etc., etc. Yes, and each one of them has a way. However, there is a lot of integration and understanding of each other and appreciation among the rabbis. This is one. What they are known by, and this is very important, that at the end of the day, these communities listening to the Rebbe. There is one leader which everyone will listen to. Like if my father will desire for something, and the Rebbe will say the opposite, my father will go with the Rebbe. End of the story. Now, since there are hundreds of Rebbeles, small Rebbes, if, for example, my brother-in-law or my brother, they will not like what the Vizhnitzer Rebbe said, so they will find another Rebbe, less small Rebbe, who will say what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. This is the end of the Rebbe, but this is good politics that we all like.
It's a pluralism beautiful. Rebbe shopping, as they call it.
And one more thing that I will say, there are a few female leaders who are stronger than their husbands. For example, very famous is the Rebbetzin, the wife of the Rebbe, from Belz, which is the number 2 in the largest, that at the end of the day, she decides everything about what's the community. It's not.
Would you say husband. She's like the Sarah Netanyahu of the Belz community? Is that the?
She is the one. It's like Alice in Wonderland, King and the Queen. Yes. Okay. So this is a Hasidim in the very large statement. Then we have the second sect, which we called Litaim. Or in English, we will call them yeshivish, or mitnagdim. Let's leave this term. We don't use it so much. The Litaim, they come historically from Lithuania, and they believe in the democracy of learning Torah, meaning anyone who studied the Talmud and become a scholar, doesn't matter who is your parents, who is your grandparents, what is your yiches, it doesn't matter. If you are a scholar of the Talmud, you become slowly a leader. And
only if you're a man, of course.
I said the Talmud, so it's connected to men, 100%. Thank you so much. And the Litaim, historically, they are much more open-minded. However, in the past 20 years, they fall in love with the structure of the Hasidim, of one Rebbe, one leader. And you see that today, they also have a few leaders who are giving the decision, what they call Da'at Torah, the decision of knowledge of the Torah, and they follow them. So you see, for example, Reb Chaim Kanievsky. You see, for example, you have a few. They lost in the past 10 years a few of their main leaders. So there is some
who are all like in their late 90s and early 100s.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you see today
Kanievsky was in the youth group, I think, of the Haredi world, right?
I really try to just create the structure because it's complicated enough. And you see today that whatever the head of the yeshiva or the head of the community will say about the military, they will follow. So they became more like the Hasidim. Now, the third sect is the Mizrahi, Jews who come with roots from North Africa, from the Middle East, and with the revolution against the Ashkenazi and the influence by the political party of Shas, of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, slowly they became also Haredi, exactly with the same enthusiastic as the Ashkenazi. But it's a new phenomena. So you will see like a head of yeshiva Mizrahi, which is clear that he is not European, but he dressed exactly with the same clothes as a Haredi yeshivish or the Lithuanian. Now, it's very important because it's a new phenomena. And why it's also important? Because unlike the Ashkenazi, that the community today, doesn't matter if you are Hasidish or Lithuanian, the whole community is Haredi, meaning your cousins are Haredi. Your cousins' cousins are Haredi. You don't have anyone who is not Haredi. In the Shas community, in the Mizrahi Haredi community, almost everyone has a cousin who is a secular Israeli Mizrahi. So the connection between them and Israeli society is much deeper. And therefore, their head of the community needed to give report not only to what they want, but also to the families of their community members. Now, I will just want to add one important group that I didn't mention. In the past 20 years, I would say like that. When I left the Haredi world, if you were on the edge, let's say you were Haredi, you were Vishnitz, but you were modern Vishnitz. We had 10, 20 families like that. Okay, my family come from that. Like my mom came from Belgium, and she insisted that we will read secular, some books that she chose. She knew, like, like Jules Verne, okay? Like a few books that she knew from her past. Today, in the past 20 years, the boundaries of the edge of the Haredi in all three sects became huge. Meaning today you have thousands of families who are officially Hasidish, officially Lithuanian, officially Shas, but they will not follow what the rabbis say. They will not vote most of the time to the Haredi parties in the Knesset.
And they are considered modern Haredim.
But they are Haredi. This is the important part. If you ask my Hasidish brother who is living in Modi'in Elite, which is, by the way, a settlement, let's leave this question about the Haredi and the settlements for a second, because they don't know they live as a settlement. But he live in Modi'in Elite, in a community that's called Brachfeld. This is the Hasidish of the Hasidish. You need to understand, Orly and Josh, how Hasidish it is. It means that in his neighborhood, only Vishnitz can live. This is crazy. Yeah. Like, his children doesn't know anyone from Gur. They don't know anyone from Belz.
God forbid,
sure they don't even met a Shas person. This is how much we speak.
Not to talk about secular Israelis.
Man dechar shmei, as we say in Aramaic. Like, who is even remember that they exist? This community, he still thinks that my sisters and my other brothers, who what we call, they are in this boundary of yeshivish, of Hasidish, of whatever, he see them as Haredi, meaning that the modern Haredi today is still part of the Haredi, and they want to be part of Israel. And this is what make the change, and this is where the hope is coming. Because all what you see on the street, it's not them.
So it's not them, but they live in a very close-knit community. So when we see the people on the protests on the streets chanting, "We will die and not enlist to the army," while actually soldiers are in the army and dying, it seems that there is like a huge gap between them and the whole of Israeli society. So you're saying that the modern Haredim are still very much Haredim, but they also are sort of a bridge to Israeli society. So that's really
100%.
interesting to maybe explain. What does it mean that they're modern? Does it mean that they send their kids to a public Haredi school, for instance? Does it mean that they're... going to the university. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating thing that October 7, I mean, I think the COVID and then October 7 make think it's like accelerator, something that make
The
things to be
accelerator.
happen much faster. So what happened is that today, I want to give you a story about my sister. So my sister, she live in Monsey in New York, which is a city for mostly Haredi. And her husband is incredible person who is doing a lot of chesed, a lot of charity. He's a philanthropist. He's incredible. What he donate, I mean, he as in his friend donate, I don't want to say numbers, to the IDF after the October 7 and to all the mefunim, uprooted Israelis from the south and from the north, like more incredible chesed. However, he never saw himself Zionist, never. He grew up Hasidish. He's working. Thanks God he's making wealth. And he's modern, but he's Hasidish, like whatever, Haredi. But October 7 creates such a change in this huge amount of, as I said, the boundaries became so huge that he became Zionist. Like he understands, they are in shock. First of all, they saw that none of their community members are serving when Israelis literally are dying in the military. They see the suffering. They hear about the miluim, how much you need to do reserve for hundreds of days. They see it. They read it. They are everywhere. But they never thought that they need to serve in the military because, as I said, it was not part of the dialogue. It was not part of the discourse. So I went to him to visit them for Purim. And at Purim, it's when everyone come to get charity. So you see like long list of people coming to get charity in his house. Many of them coming from the neighborhood next to Monsey, which called Monroe, which is where in New York, the Satmar. This is the main neighborhood of the Satmar Hasidim, the anti-Zionists.
Kiryas Yoel, right?
Kiryas Yoel, exactly. Yeah. Now, what he did, he saw that hundreds of them are coming to get charity, and he gave very nicely. So he asked his assistant to put a huge Israeli flag and to put the anthem of Israel in loop. All the time a tikva, all the time a tikva. A few Hasidic songs and a tikva. A few Hasidic song and a tikva. And what happened? He said to me, I asked him, like, did you lose your mind? And he said, listen, I'm done. If they want my money, they need to understand that they are coming to a Haredi Zionist family. End of the story. Now, I share that because maybe a little bit extreme story, but I think it tells the story of what happened.
It's an incredible story. And just out of curiosity, like what happened with,
they all came to get his money, believe me.
They kept coming, right?
There.
Yeah.
I sat there for hours. No one knows. Believe me, they all came to get it. But this is, I think, the important part. As I said, I love complexity. But at the end of the day, Israel, like every community, needs to make decisions.
So the two questions that really come out for that in two different directions, but I want to stay on the question of the army for a second because it's help our listeners understand and spell it out a little bit. What is the actual fear? What is this? Why is the army, or drafting and enlisting in the melting pot of Israeli society such a tremendous threat that people would say, as Orly just mentioned, we'd rather die than serve. Like what is that about the mentality? And then the other thread I want to explore a little bit is the difference between, the approach of Haredim in Israel versus outside of Israel and their approach to work and integration and all that, because I think, that there seems to be some inconsistencies there as well. But first, just help us understand the issue of the army that, that you experienced yourself, but is such a prevalent tension, source of tension right now in Israel.
So I want to say, and again, now I'm going to be more sensitive, okay? And and I will try to bring a few thoughts and feelings, but I want to be really, really, really sensitive toward this question. So even if I sound sometimes harsh, I want to apologize, and please, and don't hesitate to let's have a dialogue. Let's have chavruta. And I will say what they say, and I will say what I think is in their unconscious as a community. Okay, so I'm a little bit playing here also as a scholar, and I'm writing these days a book about it. It's a book that my purpose of the book is to heal this pain. I think that, as I mentioned, since we speak about now 2-3 generations of community members who never served in the military, no one asked them to serve in the military, it's like little kids, they just don't want. Why should I? Like, why should I? It's not part of my narrative. Why should I serve in the military? Now you will tell them, but Yakir, you need to serve in the military because it's a new phenomena, because it's a new reality, right? They will say, hey, just before October 7, for a few years, the military demanded to shrink itself and shrink itself and shrink itself. So we understand that now you have some trauma. We understand that you're afraid, but with all due respect, in 10 years, you will not want to shrink again. We don't trust you that it's not just your fear now speaking. Like you are now saying that you need more soldiers. But in 5-6 years, you will speak differently as you spoke a few years before October 7. I mean, what? The generals before October 7 were not wise? And they demanded to have a smaller unit. So nothing really changed. What changed is that Israeli memory is very short and the Haredi memory is very long. It's like the Middle East. Someone said, like, just now Iran had a revolution, or just now they became Muslim. I spoke with the Iranian person. What is right now? We speak about hundreds of years. Irrelevant. The history of modern people start when you're born and end when you die. Because of the individualism. The history or the memory of the Haredi is like my memory when I was born, when my ancestors were born. So this is one. The second thing is that some of the rabbi will say and claim that actually what we need is actually less soldiers and more people who study Torah. Because October 7 proved you that with all your military, with everything that you had, you just failed. Like a few stupid people with Toyota and Kalashnikov took the south of Israel. So it's not really the military. What really failed is that we don't behave in the way the Jews need, according to the Jewish theology, to behave when they decide to live inside the sacred land. And if you don't live according to that, it doesn't matter how many soldiers. So what we need is actually that Orly and her family will start behave like as we think, we believe, or Jews believe, according to them, that how we should live. This is a second. But now let's speak, I think, about much more nuanced things. When you come to the military historically, and again, historically we speak about Israel doesn't exist for so many years in Haredi mind. They still remember...
Only as a concept, right? Not as a real place.
I mean, what is Israel? It's 8 years, like it's nothing. It's a new phenomenon. It was just born yesterday. Ben Gurion wanted to make a melting pot. What is melting pot? Officially, we will say, let's bring all the people from diaspora and we will put them in one military, and a new phenomenon, the new Jew, as the Zionists claim, will arrive. But we all know that it's a lie. Let's not tell stories anymore, and the Haredi are not stupid. What actually Ben Gurion wanted, which is totally okay, it's fair. He wanted to bring all the diaspora Jews and to make them to be Zionists that look like people in the Moshav and in the kibbutz. And the Haredi don't want to be like the Moshav and the kibbutz. They don't see anything beautifully or unique about that. They want to be like their grandparents and great-grandparents before the Holocaust. So the question that they ask you is, are you seriously want me in the military? Are you seriously want me in the military? Because if you want me in the military, so why do you ask me to study the core studies of Liba? What's the connection? I don't want to be an Israeli like you. I want to be Haredi. So the question is, do you really want me there? And now I want to give an example. You know that the Israeli military, and I had the gift to study and to work many years next to some of the people who wrote the ethical code of the military. Avi Sagi, Moshe Albertal, incredible people. Noam Zohar and others. Asa Kasher wrote the first one, Orly, and then later these beautiful people did incredible work to adapt it. And then a few years ago, there have been a unit for Haredis that's called Netzach Yehuda. It's a gdud. I don't know how to say gdud in English, but it's a unit. It's
a
a
battalion, right?
Battalion.
battalion? Okay, but we speak about like 100-something soldiers inside the Nachal, by the way, which is interesting because the Nachal is very secular in the mind of many of us. Now, Netzach Yehuda, this units, this brigade, serve mostly in the West Bank. And again and again and again and again, the military need to deal with their unethical behavior.
To say the least.
Palestinians, to say the least. When the officers come to the soldiers and tell them, why do you behave like that? They say, what do you want? We behave according to our ethics. You wanted us in the military. You wanted us to be Jewish in the military. You told me that I will be Haredi, so give me to be Haredi. The ethical code of the military is made by secular, or let's not secular, but like liberal, democratic scholars.
I wouldn't call Moshe Halbertal secular, but
No, I mean liberal. I apologize.
Western-minded.
I thought about Asa Kasher, but of course, the rest are actually modern Orthodox.
Political scientists.
Very liberal. My best friends and teachers, my best. But they come with liberal ideas, and they say, this Haredi, but you ask us to serve in the military, give us to behave as we believe Jews should be. Now, it's something that's made me, because I had interviews with many of them, to understand that we needed to be mature around this question. Do you want the Haredi in the military? Or do you want them in your military, which is liberal, democratic, Jewish military? But they don't want to be liberal, democratic. So what does it mean when we want to serve in the military? So this is one more thing.
Can you give us an example?
After that, I want to say one more thing, which is very important, but I can leave it and we can Josh or Orly.
I just wanted to say a word because I think it really goes into the question of how do you integrate Haredim into Israeli society without changing Israeli society? Because what we're seeing is not only for Haredi soldiers to say we don't accept any of your ethical codes because we do whatever, the Talmud says. We also see instances of actually pushing female soldiers, right? Because the army now promises Haredi soldiers, come and serve, and you won't see even once during 2 years of service a female soldier, which is basically creating a world without women, which does not exist in Haredi communities too, right? So we are bringing them in, and that's, by the way, the same with universities. We want to get Haredim to study in universities, so we are promising gender-segregated programs that will hurt female lecturers, and we're saying we'll do all of this. We'll throw the women under the wheels of the bus in order for the Haredim to come. Why? Because we need them in the army, because we need them to study academic studies, to join the workforce, because the Israeli economy cannot sustain itself in the long run if we have a huge Haredi community in which half of the men do not work. Let's do everything and give up on all of our liberal democratic values. And the question is, of course, we don't want to do it, right? We want to get them integrated into Israeli society, which is liberal and democratic. And I think it really runs very deep to the question of how do we live together in a country which is Jewish and democratic. And it goes back to the issue of core subject, because they have to study in the Haredi schools not only math and English, but also civic studies and what democracy is all about. If we want to be together, we have to have this joint ethical and value-driven framework. And I think what I want to ask you is, are there people within the Haredi community who want to actually live together with the Israelis, understanding that they would be able to be Haredim, but in a framework of a liberal democracy?
Beautiful. So I really love, Orly, what you said, and then your question. What I want to summarize what you said, in my words, is actually you want the Haredi to join the liberal, democratic, Jewish military and country. And they said, so you want us not to be Haredi. And with all due respect, we are not interested in your project. End of the story. No, wait. They are not interested in the project. The project is to change them. So it's exactly what Ben Gurion did, just in the 2026 version.
Of course, they're interested in the project because they want to be supported and getting benefits. Otherwise, their way of living cannot be sustained.
Exactly. So this is where I believe, and now we come to Yakir, that this is a moment when we need to make decisions. We can hold complexity, but at the end of the day, as a country, you need to make decisions. Now, why I think there is a lot of hope? Because, as I said, the boundaries of the Haredi become bigger and bigger, larger and larger. And the people in these boundaries, what they want is to be a friend of you both, Orly and Josh. They want you in their life. They do not want this separation between gender in such a strict way. Again, it will change you, Orly. It will change you, Josh. If you want someone to have a dialogue with you, you need to be open to change and you will change. However, I think the basic, I would not say liberal, but the basic democratic values they want. How much of the liberal values here, I think if we want to integrate them, the liberal definition of Israel is going to change. Now, I think that there needs to be core things that Israelis should not agree to change. For example, questions around gender. I'm feminist. This is my first identity that I have in my life. And when I see the results of my female lecturers at the academy, of the wish to integrate Haredi, I'm really worried. When I see how much women were fighting to serve in the most elite unit in the military, I am worried. And this is where, and let's speak about LGBTQ, etc. It's not going to end there. So I think we need to really, really do homework among ourselves to ask, what does it mean to integrate the Haredi? Because there will be enough Haredi that will want to integrate slowly. But in order to do that, and here I'm going to be harsh, and it's okay to disagree with me. It's really hard for Haredi people who want to send their kids to Haredi Mamlachti, as Orly you mentioned, to schools where they study general studies, core
state
studies,
schools,
state schools, which are still Haredi. And by the way, the values of respect women there, it's not only that, they study about body-mind studies. It's many, many different things. Like I have a few of my siblings there, and it's unbelievable. It's like, I cannot believe that they study and I didn't have it. Probably I would stay maybe Haredi. But the issue is that these schools needs to be the only schools, in my opinion, that are going to get money from the government. End of the story. Because from the moment that you give the majority of the money not to them, it's really easy for the Haredi politicians, and I say politicians, to play with the rabbis. That at the end of the day, the rabbi study Torah. What do you want from him? He needs to help his family who's suffering from cancer, from poverty, from many, many things. What he knows about Israel is from the politicians. They hold the power. Yes, that's all. That's what I want to say. So we need to decide to be tough.
The power question is incredibly important. And a number of years ago, Yair Lapid gave a speech to a Haredi audience in which he said, look, you need to switch your mindset from that of a minority mindset of always, being on the shulaim, how do you say, the periphery of society, the fringes of society, to the mainstream now. And so I'm wondering, are there internal conversations going on within the Haredi world, both in the, Hasidic, Litvish, and Sephardi, Mizrahi world, about what that means now for us to have power and to be responsible for decisions that influence not just our community, but, broader speaking in terms of security issues, in terms of, welfare, healthcare, education, all of those things, and how they're looking to do that. And I think we have to, sum up here. But
answer, I would say the answer is yes, inside the boundaries, which are very wide. I don't think that inside vision, I know that inside visions, they are not going to ask these questions. They're not even seeing you. They're not even in the demonstrations, the majority of them. They maybe will go to large majority, like demonstration, like the ghouls. They went now in thousands of it, but they will be there just because the Rebbe said, they gave an order, but they don't really care. It's not a threat on them. The main threat is money. Now, the question is, how Israeli society, leave the Haredi politicians, how Israeli society will feel when they are going to close budget to family with 14 kids. Now, I don't know how you will feel with that and how much you're going to say, I'm closing money, let's say, for the institute specific institute, but I'm going to give tons of money to the alternative Haredi institutes that want to have dialogue with you. Like, for example, the many schools and high schools and yeshiva of Netzach, which is, it's a network of Haredi, Mamlachti schools, high schools for both gender, by the way, and yeshiva that led by my beloved friend, Rabbi Menachem Bombach, who is also from Vizhnitz.
And also Bezalel Cohen has Chochmat Lev.
And Bezalel, yeah, they're all doing it together. And also for sure Atida, which is incredible organization for Haredi women who are working inside the military and create huge change inside the Haredi world. So we need to be sensitive to that. But my main question that I want to leave this dialogue to anyone who listens to us, if we're going to invite the Haredi community to join the dialogue, and I don't speak about the people that you see now on demonstrations, you don't want them right now in the military. What you want is to push the boundaries, the large boundaries, first of all, to join you and to say, we want to be part of the project. And they're there. And they will influence the Vizhnitz, the Ger, the Yeshivas, the Ponyubij, etc. Let's just be realistic. I love realism. But my question to you is, Israel is going to change because the Haredi people who wants to have dialogue with you do not hold liberal values. And this is a question. They will disagree to see Josh as a rabbi. Now, you can say in 100 years they will. Okay, fine. If Josh is okay to start pushing your boundaries from your life, to start thinking as a Haredi of the coming 300 years, I think it will be much more chavruta.
I'll tell you afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, but I want to put it here because Israel needs to make a decision that Israel will change. The military will change. They will not come to the military and they will play according to Asa Kasher and my beloved Avi Sagi. They will not play according to these rules. So how much we okay to change? And I think that one more thing of hope that I want to bring here is that there are today thousands of ex-Haredi like as me, that today we are speaking both languages because we love both communities. And I think that the role of us as ex-Haredi who serve in the most elite unit and we are in every place in Israel, our role to speak both languages and to be invited to speak these both languages is crucial because we are not, the majority of ex-Haredi are not against Haredi.
Yeah.
We are in totally different world. We are not secular. We are nothing. We're a new phenomena that can be interesting to heal this pain.
Thank you so much. It's really an eye-opener, and I think we could speak hours more. I do want to also end with two hopeful notes. One is that from my experience of dealing with a lot of cases of gender segregation and fighting exclusion of women, I've learned, and our listeners should know, that we have, you said, the Haredim are going to change Israeli society, but I've learned that like in every society, within Haredi society, we have a lot of opinions. And we have a lot of people who share our opinions in the sense that, yes, we shouldn't have gender segregation. We should have rights for women. Women should sit at the front of the bus and not at the back of the bus. And
for sure.
I want to tell you that when I fought gender segregation on buses, I had Haredi women call me and tell me, thank God that there are Reform Jews in the world. You are fighting our fight. 100%. And when we filed a civil suit, a class action suit against a radio station that did not allow ultra-Orthodox women to speak on air, the station told us, once we put women on air, nobody would listen to the station. And of course, the reality was the complete opposite because people wanted to hear female voices. 100%. I think that a lot of times we see that the requirement, the demands of the ultra-Orthodox leadership does not reflect actually the Haredi, and a lot of people want something different. And for me, this is hopeful. And another thing for hope is that because the issue of the Haredim has reached a boiling point, both the army, but especially the educational system and the benefits, I'm pretty sure that if the next government is going to be without Haredim, we're going to see major changes. And you spoke about stopping to fund the political networks of the Haredim. I think this may actually happen, and this is a huge step to actually strengthen the state system of the Haredi sector and could really bring about amazing change.
Amen, Be'ezrat Hashem, of course.
Amen.
So Josh, next to
Yakir,
you.
thank you so much. And I think we may need a part 2 to discuss the whole diaspora the Haredi communities. And that's a whole other sugia, a whole other discussion into itself. But Yakir, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This
Thank
has
you
been
for
so
your
rich
work.
and so important, and we really appreciate it.
And yeah, conversations like this are exactly why we started this podcast. This podcast exists because we believe Israel can be better for all who live here and for all who care about it from afar. But that takes honest conversation and it takes partnership. If these conversations are important to you, please share this episode and help us keep this conversation going.
And to stay up to date, subscribe on our YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to help us grow, leave a 5-star review. Maybe something like, oh, after listening to the Pluralist Podcast, I feel even more hope that the Haredim can, succeed and integrate into Israeli society. Or I'm even more confused about this enigma and I can't quite wrap my head around it. But I'm grateful to Yakir for shedding light into the story. Something like that. You don't have to use that verbatim, but you get the point. Or share a post on social media and send this episode to someone who should be part of this conversation. And of course, if you'd like to sponsor an episode of the Pluralist Podcast, we'd love to help you honor someone or celebrate a birthday or anniversary that way. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.